You know, when a Wall Street analyst tries to predict a foreign company's future, they're not just crunching numbers. Nope, they're wrestling with something way more fundamental. It's a hidden variable that can cost millions or even billions when things get lost in translation. So let's figure out what that variable actually is. So today, we're going to break down this really fascinating study from the Journal of International Accounting Research. And believe me, it tackles a multi-billion-dollar question that's been hiding in plain sight for years. And that big question is this: why are Wall Street's predictions for foreign companies so often wrong? I mean, way less accurate than for companies right here at home. This is a huge, well-known problem in finance. But why it happens? Well, that's been a total mystery. Okay, so you might be thinking you already know the answer, right? But hold on. Because what this research shows is that the obvious explanation, well, it isn't the whole story. Not even close. There's something else going on here, a hidden variable. All right, so first up, let's really nail down the core problem these researchers were trying to solve. Okay, so it's a documented fact. This isn't just a hunch. When an analyst in, say, New York, tries to predict the earnings for a company based in Tokyo or maybe Sao Paulo, their forecasts just have way bigger errors. I mean, significantly larger than when they're forecasting for a company down the road in Texas. So, for the longest time, everyone had a prime suspect for this problem. Simple geography. Distance. And I mean, that makes sense, right? The thinking was pretty straightforward. The farther away a company is, the harder it is to get good info. You can't just pop over to headquarters, it's tougher to understand the local market. All that crucial information just gets kind of fuzzy when it has to travel thousands of miles. But this is where the study gets really interesting. The researchers asked a brilliant question. They said, what if the distance that matters most isn't on a map at all? What if it's in the dictionary? And just like that, they decided to follow a brand new clue, a hidden one: the inherent difficulty of the language itself. So, what exactly do we mean by language difficulty? Let's be clear, this isn't about which language is better or worse. It's actually a measurable concept. It's all about how different two languages are at their core. Grammar, vocabulary, even the script they're written in. The more different they are, the higher the difficulty score. To make this super clear, check out this scale from the U.S. Foreign Service Institute. It basically ranks languages on how long it takes a native English speaker to learn them. So you've got Spanish at one end, a Category 1 language, pretty easy to get the hang of. But as you move down the list to languages with totally different grammar and alphabets, think Russian, Chinese, or Japanese, whoa, that difficulty index just skyrockets. So here it is, the core hypothesis. The researchers predicted that the bigger the language gap between English and the company's native tongue, the more likely the analysts were to get their forecasts wrong. It's not about the miles, it's about the miscommunication. Okay, it's one thing to have a really cool hypothesis, but you've got to be able to back it up, right? So how did they actually test this? Well, let's dive into the evidence, the numbers. So here's what's really happening on the ground. Think about it. For companies in countries with a high language difficulty, analysts are just struggling. They can't easily skim the local news, they can't just pick up the phone and chat with suppliers, and they definitely can't catch the subtle cultural nuances in a CEO's statement. So much gets lost. But for companies where the language is closer to English, that information just flows so much more freely. It's a night and day difference. And here it is, the smoking gun. After crunching the numbers on over 17,000 forecasts, the data was just crystal clear. The average forecast error for companies with a low language difficulty was about 2.34%. But for companies with a high language difficulty, it jumped to 3.21%. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but in the world of finance, that difference is absolutely massive. The language barrier is real, and it is very, very costly. But wait, the story doesn't end there. Because the researchers also figured out that some things can actually help tear down this language wall. There are ways to make that signal from the company come through much more clearly. And the good news is, this isn't some unsolvable puzzle. The study found that the analyst's own skills really matter. You've got more experienced analysts, the veterans who've learned how to navigate these tricky situations, they make fewer mistakes. And, well, no surprise here, an analyst who is actually fluent in the local language, yeah, they're way more accurate. And it's not just about the individual analyst either. The whole system can help. So when countries adopt international accounting standards, think of it like a financial Rosetta Stone for the whole world. It seriously reduces that language barrier.
And the same thing happens in countries that just have a strong culture of high-quality, transparent reporting. Good rules and clear standards can absolutely help bridge that gap. So, okay, why does all this matter? Why should any of us care about a few percentage points on some analyst's spreadsheet? Well, because it has huge, huge real-world consequences. Let's just take China for a second. Its language has a very high difficulty rating for English speakers, right? Well, the average forecast error for firms there is almost 5%. 5. That is a massive amount of uncertainty for anyone thinking about investing.
And look, this isn't just some academic number, it's not a score in a game. That number represents real risk. It means investors are working with a fuzzy, out-of-focus picture of what's really going on. And that can lead to mispriced stocks, bad investments. We're talking about real costs to the capital markets. It's basically a tax you pay for not speaking the same language. Which really leaves us with one final thought. You know, we love to think of our world as this totally connected global village, right? All thanks to technology. But what a study like this shows is that some really deep, really fundamental barriers are still there. And it just makes you wonder, not just in finance, but in business, in diplomacy, in everything, what's the true cost of being lost in translation?